This is the Growing a Little Wiser show, brought to you by Joshua DeLeon. This episode is powered by Ferocious Productions. For coming, I think this is a very wonderful opportunity for me to have, just to have a nice conversation with you. And I really think that you set a good example for me when it comes to understanding religion, because I think a lot of times people are uncomfortable talking about it. People have questions. People have, I don't want to say doubts, but mainly it's just doubts are just questions because, they don't understand what it is really. But just to start it off, I've read that your dad was a pastor. So tell me about, just growing up in a household with a pastor dad, because from the stories that I've had friends who've lived in the same situation, and I guess just us being young, having those kind of conversation, we have a different interpretation of living with a dad that's a pastor. So how was that for you?
Well, like you said, my dad has been a pastor my whole life.
Yeah.
A preacher my whole life. And so I've always been around the church and around a Christian context. And so growing up, it was at times, it's just with anything. At times it's really good. We like it. It's cool. And then at times it's I don't like this. I hate this. We were always at church.
Right.
Always at church.
Right.
Which it was fun when it was playtime and we could be around our friends and it was cool. Or when we got older, we wanted to talk to boys, and so we were in different environments,
Yeah,
and so
right.
we could meet other people. It was fun then. But then when you had to actually sit in a church setting or get up early and be at Sunday school or go to vacation Bible school and actually be in a teaching setting, it was when I get older, I do not want to do this.
Right.
This is too much.
Right.
Do we really need this much church? So it was, and when it was good, it was good. When it wasn't good to us,
Right.
It wasn't good to us. But what I will say, though, is as I got older, I feel like a lot of my waywardness and a lot of the things that I did that were contrary to God's word and his will came from a place of wanting to prove that I didn't have to live under the umbrella of my dad as a preacher and my mom being a preacher's wife. And so I think it was just a lot of rebellion too that came from being in that setting my whole life. Wasn't anything that my parents did.
Right.
It was just me trying to prove myself to other people. But now that I am where I am, I thank God for that. I thank God for who he's been through my parents. I thank God for the consistency that my parents have shown. And then just their dedication to being who they needed to be in the positions that they were in. So I think it's worked out okay. It started off a little rocky.
Right.
Didn't really like it much. But now I'm really thankful for it.
Right. Was you ever in a position in your life to where it's something bad happened in your life? Did you ever, because one of the main things that a lot of us, and I think it's very inevitable for people to go through this, did you ever go through your life to where it's you question his existence? And how did you go back to okay, my faith is being tested. I need to go harder and getting to know what I believe in. I mean, did you ever go through that phase?
Man, yes, I did. And what I will say this first. When the Bible says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is older, he will not depart from it, it's really true.
Yeah.
Because you find your footing and your foundation in what has been laid out for you beforehand. But I went through a situation. I was in college, and it wasn't anything that anybody else did. It was what I allowed myself to get into and what I had given myself to. So the responsibility ultimately fell on me. But went through a situation in a relationship where I was like, God, how? Why did this happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
What is going, like, what did I do wrong? Like, what is going on? And I really began from that. I was like, you know what? God, it really doesn't matter how I live. It really doesn't matter what I do. Like, because you aren't here for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those thoughts like just really just circulate, and they fester and they build up, and you begin to really give into those things. Because I'm like, okay, God, if you allow this to happen, if you allow this person to do this to me, then do you really have my back? Are you really protecting me? Are you really here?
Right.
Like, what are we really doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was all this that I was hearing before? And it really challenged my belief, and it challenged my upbringing and things in general, because it was like I couldn't understand why at the time. Mm-hmm. But then I got older, and I'm like, well, Brittany, had you not done what you did, then that would not have happened. And I think a lot of times we don't really understand this whole ripple effect that happens in life. You know, we go through things sometimes because of our own doing. And sometimes, I mean, it's just it's the evil thoughts of other people. People have a choice to make, and they make bad choices, or God allows these things to happen, and He's using it to test our faith. In my particular case, it was me. I had brought that on myself, and then I got the nerve to ask God, like, what happened? Like, what? How dare I? You know? But it did happen though, and the reason why I used that passage earlier was because when I think about what kept me tethered to the faith, when I think about what brought me back to just what I had been taught and what I knew, it was because I had seen it lived out in front of me. And so if it worked for other people, it had to work for me.
Right.
It can't just, because I mean, if something is fallible, if it does not work, if it will fail, and if it just has not been proven to work for anybody, it won't work for anybody.
Right.
You know, but if it's worked for other people, then I know it can work for me. Mm-hmm. And so I fell back on that, and I really let that anchor me, and I let God's truth speak to me. And I had to really take responsibility for my part in it. And I had to understand why things happened the way that they happened. And from there, I changed my mind. Mm-hmm. I changed my direction. I wanted to do something different. And when I started doing things differently, I started seeing God show up different in my life. And when they say He will prove Himself to you, He will prove Himself to you.
Right.
And you will begin to see everything that people talked about. You begin to see the manifestation of even the words that He has already said in His word. Like, all those things begin to like speak to you, and you begin to experience things in a different way. And it's like, now I get it. Mm-hmm. Had I done what I was supposed to do, we would have been cool. It would have been fun.
Yeah, right.
But you know, I mean, but you live and you learn. I mean, it's natural. It's normal. Even when we experience things like death, those things are uncontrollable most of the time. You know, like I don't control whether you are going to live or die. So that's not within my wheelhouse. Right. But in times like that, we question God. We wonder, like, why this person? Mm-hmm. You know, why that? And so, I mean, it's going to happen. Things are going to happen that's going to cause us to question God's existence. But in those moments, we really have to ask ourselves, is this my doing? Is this just the evil in this world? Is this God testing me? Like, what is it? Or is it something that happened 10 years ago? Again, back to the ripple effect. Is it something that happened 10 years ago? And if it is, then instead of asking God, why, or who are you, or are you here, maybe we should start asking ourselves, God, what? What do you want me to see? Mm-hmm. What do you want me to learn from this? What do you want me to get? What do you want me to do now with what I have to help somebody else? Right. And, you know, maybe if we start framing our questions differently, it'll cause us to see God in a different way. But I definitely went through that, and I had to change my mindset and remember what I was taught, remember what I had seen, and remember what I really did know about God Himself.
Then coming back to the type of household that you grew up in, did you have a talk with your father or your mom about what was happening to you, and did they somehow influence or guide you to like going back to the path that, you know, believing in God?
They did, actually. I initially, you know, like you do stuff and you're like, I don't want to tell anybody
Right.
It's so crazy. You know, you've been embarrassed and stuff, and you're like, oh, God. If I tell them, they're going to just, I don't know how they're going to respond. But they were a lot more understanding than I thought they would be. And they always had, because they're good, sound, wise people, they always had good, sound, wise advice for me and both of my siblings. And so they did. It always went back to what God said, his love for us, how he cares about us, you know, and they always reminded me of those things and how, I needed to just focus on that, and I needed to be anchored in that. And so, yeah, it was helpful. I mean, it's always helpful to know too that you aren't going to be judged by the people that you feel like would pass judgment on you. You know, it's always good to have that support from people in a way that not only tells you, they don't just tell you what's right, but they also love you to what's right.
Exactly.
You know, and they help you process, they help you through things. And so, yeah, they were real understanding. They were real supportive during the process. I mean, they're really good people. I didn't always know that, but they're really good people.
And that actually brings me to the main question that I have. Mm-hmm. So what if there's just like, you know, you're going through something, you're already questioning his existence, and then the people that you think that should love you, especially your family. I mean, there's just instances that people come from a family to where it's like very, very not good. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with that kind of thing?
Oh, man. This is a perfect example. So my dad has been preaching from Genesis. He's been preaching about the story of Joseph, right? So Joseph, he went through a lot of stuff, So his brothers, he had told his dad and his brothers about this dream because he could interpret dreams. He had dreams, he could interpret dreams. So he told his brothers and his dad about this dream. His brothers didn't really like it because in the dream, Joseph was like, y'all are going to bow to me and all the things, you know. Right. So he was telling that. And I mean, you know, they probably took it as like arrogance. Like, we're not going to bow to you. Who are you? You know, you're the youngest. Like, we don't, or you're one of the younger brothers. Like, no. So ended up, they threw him in a pit.
Right.
His brothers threw him in a pit. Mm-hmm. He was sold into slavery, then sold again to the Egyptians. And then when he got to Egypt, he ended up being, you know, he ended up finding favor with God in Egypt. But then when he got to Egypt, Potiphar's wife lied on him, said that he tried to like rape her or whatever, you know, all the things, was thrown in prison. So all of these things happened because of what his brothers did to him. Right. Right. His family. Mm-hmm. This is how family will do you. And so, but ended up though, he was head over the prison. He ended up being over the prison, and eventually he ended up being promoted to the palace. So he was Pharaoh's right-hand man, basically, riding in the second chariot. So a famine came in the land. Everybody had to go to him to get food, even his brothers. All of these people that had did him wrong, that had done him wrong, had to end up going to him. And so it really makes, like, Psalms live out, like, God will make your enemy your footstool, and he will prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemy. He really will do that because it's real. And even if your enemies are your family, or even if they're people those are the people who have done you wrong, again, it goes back to you have to see what God wants you to do in those situations. You have to ask God, what is it that I'm supposed to learn from this? What is it that I'm supposed to do in order to help advance your mission, advance the kingdom? Like what is it that you need from me? Right. Because it may not have anything to do with your family. It may have everything to do with you. God may be trying to elevate you above the things that you think are bringing you down. He may actually be trying to just, you know, level you up. Right. And we don't always see it like that because in the moment it's hard. It's bad. It is. You know what I mean? Like your folks, your people are not supposed to do you like that. Those are the last people that you expect to do you like that. But at the end of the day, though, they are not God. Mm-hmm. They don't know everything about you. they can't possibly know everything about you
Exactly.
because we don't have that all-encompassing knowledge of everything. We don't have absolute knowledge. So they don't know what your purpose is. They don't know where you're supposed to be in the next 10 years. They don't even know where they're going to be in the next 10 minutes. None of us do. And so that's when we really have to focus on, okay, God, what is your intention for my life? What is your plan for my life? Because clearly these people don't get it. You know, and I mean, I think that would help a lot to just see things differently when people do certain things to us that we did not ask for.
Right.
Again, some stuff we may bring on ourselves, you know, but the things that we don't, it's like, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because God, I'm leaving them up to you because you got to work on them. You got to fix them because clearly they have an issue with me that I don't know. And so you deal with that.
Right.
But while you're dealing with them, you help me to see where I need to go in this because I still got to keep moving forward.
So at the end of the day, it's just basically like family or not, it's just your journey.
Yep.
And his journey.
Yep.
Him and you.
Him and you. I mean, it's got to be because if we don't see things like that, I don't think we understand how much we can stifle our growth and how we can be stagnant in places and we stay too long. We stay too long in ruts. We stay too long in trenches because we are allowing people to dictate the path of our life instead of allowing the person who knows everything about us to dictate that path, the person who knows where we're going to be, where we're supposed to be. If we give that control to people,
they have too much power.
They have too much power.
Yeah.
And people don't need that much power. We don't know what to do with that.
Exactly.
You know, we can't will that much power and do right with it. Like it's because that's not for us to do.
Right.
That's not for us to have. But when you give that to people, you put yourself.
It's gonna be chaos.
It's gonna be chaos.
Right.
You put yourself in a really bad predicament, and that's not what you want.
I think it's just sometimes that happens, and we can't help ourselves but dwell like, damn, they're supposed to be the last one. You know, they're supposed to love me. They're supposed to guide me. But yeah, I think we have to come to a realization to where it's just like, just to literally understand that it's just you and him to find yourself in the right path. And I think that takes a lot of maturity to do.
It does. Because
you have to let go of people that you love, that you think is supposed to love you because you came from that family. But how about, it's just sometimes it's hard. It's hard to think about because, I mean, as an adult, you know, we've learned to stand on our own feet. You know, we pay our bills and stuff. But what about those, I mean, I say like teenagers. You know, teenagers, you're more conscious than when you was younger. So, but then you still have to depend on your parents. You still have to deal with that kind of environment. You still have to live in whatever kind of environment it is. How do you just not let your environment that you got to depend on influence on how you want to believe or to find your belief in them?
I think it depends on what you truly desire, you know, in your heart. I believe, because I don't believe that God will leave any of us in terrible situations without giving us some way out. And not more so out, you may not even be out of the home. It may be a way out right there where you are. But I believe that he'll do that. I believe if it's really in your heart to want a different situation, he'll provide that for you. Whether it's through an after-school program, whether it's through sports, whether it's through, you know, other people. And what your role is to respect the role and the position of your parents. You don't have to agree with what they do, how they do it, but you have to respect the role because one day you may be in that role. My dad says it all the time. So you respect the position because if you're ever in that position, you want someone to respect you in it. Right. But you don't necessarily have to again agree with what's going on. But I do believe that even in situations, I don't know if you've ever been in a room and you felt like you were the only person in the room.
Yes, a lot.
It can be that way even in a home. And that can be a good thing for some people,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, okay, they pay the bills here, they feed me, everything else I'm gonna leave it to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm gonna trust that I'm gonna get a way out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really gonna I want a way out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's hard because, you know, even with like teenagers and you're young, you know, our minds are still young, we're still maturing, they're still developing, and it gets hard to just truly like give into that idea that, okay, God has got my back.
Mm-hmm.
But again, there have been kids who have done it, who have been in situations like that, who have testimonies of things that have happened with them that God has brought them out of because they really did give themselves to him. They really did rely on them. I don't think God leaves any of us just out to dry. He won't hang any of us out to dry. I think he does extend a hand in some kind of way, but we got to know how he's doing it. Yeah. You know, we got to know what's going on, and we got to see it for what it is instead of allowing the circumstance of our household to determine how we respond and react to what God is trying to bring us and what he's trying to give us. So I think he will, but even in that time, I think even teenagers like that need to seek out people that can help them. Mm-hmm. You know, like, and we can't always wait for people to come to us and things to come to us. We got to ask for help. Like, if you know somebody that you can trust, that you can talk to, like, hey, having this situation at home, you never know.
Exactly.
They may be your opportunity. They may be the person that's going to help you out of your situation. And so I think too, it takes us knowing that we are in a bad predicament and then taking the necessary steps to finding other people, communities, and other things and other ways to bring ourselves out.
It feel like you just read my mind. Oh. And then it just, because I was going to ask, like, how do you train? Because, you know, like we was talking about, it's your own journey in him. Mm-hmm. And then I was going to ask, how do you train your mind to be just strong enough to, like, accept the fact that, you know, you got to respect your parents at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Find your own, you know, your own way of just being alone and just finding yourself. Mm-hmm. Then you just basically said, you know, seek help. I mean, not seek help, but seek other people that you can trust and talk to. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to seeking people that you can talk to, how do you determine if a person is the right person that you talk to about things like this? And how do you transition from that? And because I feel like when you encounter that kind of circumstance, it's going to go back to you questioning his existence.
For sure.
So how do you navigate through that and just deal with it? And because, of course, you don't want to just give up.
Right.
So how do you deal with those kind of things?
I think first and foremost, because if we're already in a bad situation, we don't want to compound it and make it worse by adding more people to it, right? So what I think is important, is so important, even with us as adults, because we don't do it well either. You know, I don't care how old or young you are, we mess up in this particular department. Is we really got to monitor people's lifestyles. We really got to, like, watch how people are moving and what they're doing. Because whether we believe it or not, whether we know it or not, there will be something that people will do that will clue us in to how they really are. We just got to be paying attention. We can't let our place of hurt and place of vulnerability and pain cause us to reach out too hastily for somebody. We can't be looking for somebody and looking for a way out so bad that we just take anybody's word for who they say they are. We can't just grab onto anybody. You got to, like, stop and examine first the person that you want to help you. Like, what are they doing? What are they like? How do their kids respond to them? Do their kids respect them? Do kids around them seem a little weird? Like, how, you know what I mean? You got to be watching all of that stuff. How do they interact with other adults? How do they act when they get upset? Like, what? And so if you see things that are like red flags, take them as what they are. They are red flags. You need to stop. You know, and like don't even go there. Find somebody else.
Right.
Like, we ain't even
don't even give it the benefit of the doubt.
Right. Don't even give it. That ain't it. Because you already in a bad situation.
Right.
You don't want to have to deal with that too. Because now you really gonna question God's existence. Because then you're gonna be like, well, why would you let them do me like this too? They already do me my
right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that makes it worse. So you really gotta see things for what they are, and really take a step back and observe things. We're not good at observing things. We want to just, rush into stuff, and we get really impetuous, and we can't be that way, because that's when we start messing stuff up.
Exactly.
And that's not what you want when you're already dealing with something that is heavy on you and that is weighty on you. So first and foremost, you got to take your time. Mm-hmm. You got to observe. You got to watch. You got to be vigilant, because you got to guard your heart. You got to protect yourself.
Exactly.
And a lot of times protecting yourself is protecting yourself from people. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if we did that, then a lot of those questions would really dissipate. They would dissolve. We wouldn't have to really worry about having a lot of these God questions, because if we actually let Him. Because really, He's showing us people when people do what they do. That's exactly. God showing us.
People gonna show themselves.
People gonna show themselves. They are, and that's God being so merciful by allowing us to see that, so we know. And if we wait on that, wait to see it before we move, I think we'll be a lot better off, for real. And I mean, it's just like, even with believers and people who say that they represent Christ and that they're doing what the Lord is telling them to do, and they don't, and they're not, and you got to observe that too. You got to look at that. We can't take stuff that people say all the time and take it as the gospel. Like, no, what is your life saying? Because then we mess up and we look at people, and if we don't see God in them, or we don't see Jesus in them, we begin to make God like them and Jesus like them. And it's like, no, He's not the same person. Right. They're them, He's Him, and He's gonna be Him all the time. Right. They're not, Right. And it's even with people that we deal with on a daily basis. We can't make everybody bad because we chose to just inject ourselves into somebody's life who was bad. Right. Everybody isn't bad. Everybody isn't them. They're them. Yeah. Other people are who they are. Right. Regardless, separate from them, apart from them. So, I think if we slow down and actually observe people and watch things and then just saw them for what they are, I think we'd be a lot better off.
Damn, I lost my thought. It's coming back.
I know it will. It's coming back.
But you mentioned something about being a believer. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes, well, not sometimes, a part of me, because, I came from a country to where it's like, dating back in history, it was colonized by Christians, and they forced Christianity to us. Mm-hmm. I mean, that happened in the U.S. as well. I think the whole world, not the whole world, but majority of the world has been influenced by Christianity and stuff like that. And now we have more religion than I could even think of. Mm-hmm. And I found myself questioning, why is there so many religion, so many practices, and it just ties back to Him. How do I stop myself from doing that?
From questioning?
From questioning what to believe in. Do I just because there's people that I don't want to use the term agnostic, because I definitely believe that there's a God. Mm-hmm. But I think the main thing for me now is not about my folks or the certain circumstances that's happening in my life. Mm-hmm. It's about understanding the difference between being a believer and religious. Mm-hmm. So how do you think I can get to that point to where I understand?
Well, so you mentioned all these different religions, and we got all the. Why would it be that way if You know,
Yeah.
there is one God, there is one faith, there's supposed to be this. I mean, why do we have so many fast food restaurants when we're supposed to eat healthy? You know, why do we, you know, I mean, there are options for everything. And the reason being is because people have choices to make. And it has nothing to do with God. We can't equate God to people. People are here. We're lateral. God is here. And so people are going to do what they want to do, what they're going to do, because God gives them that choice to make. He is not going to force himself on us. He's not going to make us do anything. He's loving enough to give us a choice. He's so nice to give us a choice.
Right.
And so people make choices. They choose what gods they want to believe in. They choose what gods they want to serve. I mean, it happened all throughout the Bible. They were making carved images. They were worshiping carved images. Like, people were doing all of these things, and you actually built the God that you serve. Does that even make sense? It really doesn't, if you really think about it. So, I mean, people, but that's because people have a choice, right? They have a choice to make. And so whenever we think about that, I just, you know, you think about agnosticism and all of these different where people like, well, we don't care if there's a God or not. Like, I mean, it is what it is. I don't really, you know, we're just here. Yeah. But if you think about it, though, I mean, I don't even know who the most intelligent person in the world is, right? Yeah. But they didn't create us. Right. They couldn't. Right. And so if you think about your mind and my mind, the way we're wired, the way things work, the way things flow, who could have done that but somebody with knowledge enough and power enough to do so? That didn't just come out of thin air. If that were the case, I could snap my and we'd have a person here. Right. You know what I mean? Like, how it doesn't happen that way now. Right, right. People mate and we had kids. Somebody had to incorporate this process for all of this stuff to happen. And so then that takes us back to the beginning in Genesis. If this person has all this power, I mean, you know how much power it takes to put all this stuff here. Like, that is crazy. It takes a lot of power. And things are in their proper place. Like, you look out there right now, people aren't driving all over the road. The sun is not falling out the sky. Right. Like, trees are where they're supposed to be. Everything is working out. And so if we go back to Genesis and how all of these things were created, then that God has to be the God of the universe. And then we look at that, and I tell people this all the time. If we take what we see in Genesis, we take him at his word for creation. His words were what brought all of this into place, all of this to life. Then all of his words after that have to be true. And so if we believe that, we have to believe everything that comes after, which falls under the umbrella of Christianity. That's just a term, though, that we use. We know that people who are believers basically believe in Christ. They believe in the gospel. They believe in all that has happened, and they follow that, and they follow those doctrines as the standard for their life. Right? That's what you do. And so all of the other religions, a lot of other religions are based on a person. I can't be your God. Right. You know what I mean? Like, right. I don't want you to be my God. Right. Like, you think like me. We're all a mess. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. So, I mean, just logically, it just makes sense to just believe in a person who had enough power to do all this. Right. It just makes sense. And so, you know, when you get into religion and all that stuff, I think religion is just a system or a set of practices that we adhere to, that, you know, we do habitually. Yeah. I don't consider myself a religious person. I do things religiously. I read my Bible every day. I brush my teeth religiously. You know, I clean my body up religiously. I mean, you know, that's the thing that you need to do in order to, I mean, I brush my teeth so my teeth won't rot out, right? Right. There's a purpose for the things that we do all the time. And that's just basically what religion would be for the believer. But ultimately, it goes back to us having a relationship with the Father, because we believe everything that his son did for us. And it's not religion, it's relationship. It's me getting to know him. It's me loving on him because he loves on me. You know, and just like I would get to know a friend or a coworker or a boyfriend or a husband, it's the same thing with him.
It makes perfect sense.
You know, and it's so I think that we just need to go back to, okay, where did all this come from? Who did this? Who was powerful enough to do this? And do I trust him enough to just have power and control over my life to where I can live for him? That's it.
That makes perfect sense. No, I really do, though. And then I think it ties back to this, because I was at Henderson State.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was trying to find my way back to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I expressed to this lady how I felt about religion. And then she was just like, what can it hurt for you to believe in something?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you die, would you rather just have lived without believing nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you have died believing in something?
Right.
And I think it makes perfect sense. It ties back to what you were talking about because, I mean, it just makes perfect sense to me now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm very glad to hear that. And it's just mind blown.
Yeah.
Because some people
Yeah.
is just like, man, they will believe that, oh, the Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some people, like you said, there got to be somebody to be powerful enough to even make that Big Bang Theory happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right.
it just make perfect sense to me. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm speechless now because that makes perfect sense. And we was having this conversation. I opened up to you about my trip in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
I was telling you about my brother who I grew up with. He was one of those people who I wouldn't even say did not want to believe,
Mm-hmm.
but basically had questions.
Mm-hmm.
And now he had gotten his enlightenment. Felt like he'd been delivered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do we help other people? Or can you even help other people to find them, or do you just let them figure him out?
You can help them by way of the Holy Spirit. You let the Lord tell you how to do it and what to do. I mean, but we do it all. I mean, when we preach the gospel and we talk about him in different places and we share our testimony, just like your brother shared it with you.
Yeah.
He may have an opportunity to share it with someone else. And, you know, so just in things like that, because word of mouth is very important. I mean, people did it in the Bible all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus would heal them. They would go tell somebody.
Right.
That person would come back. They would believe, you know. And it's that ebb and flow that we have as believers in just spreading the gospel, telling people about the goodness of God. And so you tell them, you plant the seed, and God grows in. He grows whatever is going to come of it, whatever is going to bloom from it. He will do that part. But we don't force anything on anybody because God doesn't force anything on us. So we just do what we're supposed to do in telling people. And from there, you let people come to their own conclusion. You let the Holy Spirit convict their heart. You let God change their heart because you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have enough power to do that. And so we just continue to spread the good news. We continue to tell people about them, and hopefully, even sometimes you may not even have to say anything. Your lifestyle just may be enough for people to be like, hey, you know, that's good. I wonder what's different. Or they may see a change in you, you know, from who you used to be to who you are now. And they're like, oh, man, I need to talk to them, see what's going on. I like what I see. So, yeah, I just think you just handle it that way. And then you do what you're supposed to do. God will take care of the rest.
Right. Share them what they need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just take it in however they want to take it in.
Yep.
And that's basically how I want to wrap it up.
Okay.
And I want to congratulate you for your new album.
Thank you.
You invited me on your nice event here.
Yes,
and
thank you.
I know you were sharing that it's just been 5 years since you dropped an album.
Yeah, a long time.
So is it going to still be 5 years again after the next one?